The older I get, the more I realize that peace is never free. You fight for it. You protect it. And sometimes, you have to stand your ground against people who think they own the world. That lesson was burned into my memory on a day that was supposed to be nothing but joy, my wife's birthday. The morning started perfectly. The lake behind our home shimmered in the soft glow of dawn. My wife, Linda, loved this lake more than anyone I'd ever met. We had bought this property 30 years ago, before the subdivision, before the HOA. Before the newcomers who thought rules gave them power over people's lives. I remember walking into the kitchen that morning. Linda was standing by the window, her reflection caught in the glass as she looked out at the water. She had tied her silver hair into a neat bun, and the soft smile on her face told me she was already lost in the beauty of the morning. "Happy birthday, darling," I whispered, wrapping my arms around her waist. She laughed softly. "Another year older, huh? But this view makes me feel like I'm 20 again." "You'll always be 20 to me," I said, kissing her cheek. Her smile deepened, but there was a shadow in her eyes. She tried to hide it, but I caught it. "You're thinking again, aren't you?" I asked. Linda sighed, resting her head against mine. "It's just, I hope today is peaceful. You know how things have been with the HOA. Karen and her little army are always finding some excuse to make trouble." I squeezed her hand. "Not today. Today's about you, about us. No one, not Karen, not the HOA, not anyone can ruin that." She nodded, though I knew she still worried. By noon, our children and grandchildren arrived. Laughter filled the house as the little ones ran toward the backyard, eager to dip their toes into the water. The grill was set up. The smell of marinated chicken drifted through the air, and Linda's favorite chocolate cake sat waiting on the table. It was perfect. I stood by the dock, watching my son and grandson paddle out in the small rowboat, while Linda sat under the umbrella with her sister, sipping lemonade. For a moment, I thought, this is it, this is happiness. But peace, as I said, is never free. Around 3 in the afternoon, just as we were about to light the candles on Linda's cake, the sound of engines broke through the laughter. I looked up and saw 2 black SUVs pulling up near the property line. Out stepped 3 men dressed in dark uniforms, sunglasses covering their eyes, and right behind them, with her arms crossed and her lips curled in that smug little smirk, was her Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. My stomach dropped. "Not today," I muttered under my breath. The children noticed first. "Grandpa, who are those men?" my granddaughter asked, her little voice tinged with worry. Linda's smile faded as she followed my gaze. "Oh no," she whispered. I clenched my jaw. I already knew what this was. Karen had pulled stunts before: letters, threats, fines. But this was new. The men marched straight toward the dock as if they owned the place. Karen strutted behind them, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "This lake is private property of the HOA community," she declared. "You people have no right to be here. You need to pack up and leave immediately." The party went silent. Every eye turned toward her. I stepped forward, my voice steady. "Karen, this is my lake. My family and I have every right to be here." She scoffed, waving her hand toward the men. "Not according to our new regulations. And these gentlemen are here to enforce it." Looked at the so-called security. Their uniforms were generic. No official badges, no county insignias. My gut told me everything I needed to know. These weren't officers. They were hired muscle. I turned back to Karen, anger boiling inside me. "You brought fake security to my wife's birthday to kick us off our own property?" Linda stood up, her voice trembling but strong. "Karen, please. Today is special. We're not bothering anyone. Just let us be." But Karen only smirked wider. "Rules are rules. If you don't leave, there will be consequences." At that moment, the children clung to their parents, fear in their eyes. My grandson whispered, "Grandpa, are they going to take our lake away?" Something inside me snapped. I knelt beside him, looked him in the eyes, and said, "No, son. No one's taking anything from us." I stood tall, facing Karen and her fake guards. My voice rose. carrying across the water. This lake has been in my family since before this subdivision even existed. We bought this land outright, paid for it in full, and the deed clearly states that this water belongs to us. Us, not the HOA. You can throw your fake rules around all day, but you don't own a drop of this lake. For a second, I saw doubt flicker in the guard's eyes. They weren't expecting resistance. But Karen wasn't done. "We'll see about that," she sneered. "You have 5 minutes to clear out, or these men will escort you off the property." Linda's hand slipped into mine. I could feel her shaking. The children were crying now, the birthday joy shattered by fear, and in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about a lake. It wasn't even about Karen. It was about standing up for what was right. About protecting the people I loved from bullies who thought power came from intimidation. So, I took a deep breath and said the words that would change everything. "Karen, you've just made the biggest mistake of your life." The men shifted uncomfortably. One of them muttered, "Ma'am, maybe we should call the real police to sort this out." But Karen snapped, "No." I said, "Handle it." That was her second mistake. Because at that exact moment, down the dirt road, another vehicle appeared. A familiar one. White and brown with a golden star on the door. The sheriff's SUV. The sight of that truck rolling up sent a wave of relief through me. The fake guards froze. Karen's smug grin faltered for the first time. And Linda, holding my hand tighter, whispered, "Maybe today will be peaceful after all." But little did we know the storm was just beginning. The moment the sheriff's SUV rolled onto the dirt path, every sound at the party seemed to stop. The cicadas went quiet, the laughter of children had already been replaced by silence. And even the water seemed to hold still. Karen's face twisted, fighting to hold her smug expression, but her eyes darted nervously toward the men she'd brought. They didn't look so confident anymore. The SUV door opened, and out stepped Sheriff Douglas. A broad man with graying hair, he had the kind of presence that made people listen before he even spoke. His boots crunched against the gravel as he walked up, hat in hand. "Afternoon, folks," he said calmly, though his eyes scanned the scene like a hawk. "Mind telling me why I just got 3 calls about a disturbance on Miller Lake?" I exhaled slowly, stepping forward. "Sheriff, this is my property. My wife's birthday. We were celebrating when Karen showed up with these gentlemen, trying to kick us off our own lake." Karen immediately pushed to the front, her voice shrill. "Sheriff, don't listen to him. This lake is HOA property. They don't belong here. I called in security to enforce the rules." Sheriff Douglas raised an eyebrow, his eyes landing on the so-called security guards. "That's so? And which agency you boys with?" The tallest one cleared his throat. "We're with Lakeside Community Security, sir." "Funny," Douglas said, adjusting his belt. "Never heard of that outfit. You've got badges, licenses, state registration?" The men shifted uncomfortably. One muttered something about temporary contracts. Sheriff's voice dropped, firm as a hammer. "So no." At this point, Linda stepped forward, her voice trembling with emotion but steady in truth. "Sheriff, we've owned this lakefront since 1992. We paid for it fair and square. The deed has our names. But ever since the HOA formed 5 years ago, Karen has been trying to control it. Fines, letters, threats, and now this. Today was supposed to be about family, about peace, and she brought this." The sheriff listened quietly, nodding. He turned back to Karen. "You got proof this lake belongs to the HOA?" Karen's face reddened. "It's common knowledge. Everyone knows the HOA controls the amenities. This lake has always been part of the neighborhood." "Funny," Douglas said again, tilting his head, "because I've seen that deed myself. County records still listed under Mr. Miller's name. Clear as day." The silence that followed was deafening. The children began to whisper among themselves, hope flickering back into their eyes. My grandson clutched my arm and whispered, "Grandpa, does this mean we can stay?" I smiled at him, though my chest still burned with anger. "Yes, son. This is our home, and no one can take that away." Karen wasn't done. People like her never are. She threw her arms up dramatically. Sheriff, you don't understand. These people are breaking the rules. They've always broken the rules. We can't have lawlessness in the neighborhood. If you let them do this, everyone else will think they can do whatever they want. The sheriff's expression hardened. Karen, there's a difference between rules and rights. And what you're doing here? He turned to the fake guards. And what you dragged these men into looks an awful lot like harassment and trespassing. The guards immediately began backpedaling. We were just following her orders. We didn't know the details. Karen spun on them. Don't you dare turn on me. I paid you good money too. The sheriff held up his hand. That's enough. Karen, you're on thin ice. You can't hire unlicensed security to intimidate folks on their own property. You're lucky I don't haul you in right now. Linda's sister, who had been quiet until then, suddenly spoke up, her voice sharp with decades of frustration. You should haul her in, Sheriff. Do you know how many times she's harassed us? Letters about our fence being 1 inch too high, threats about fining us for hosting Sunday dinners. Even a complaint about the sound of our grandchildren laughing too loud on the dock. Gasps rippled through the family, but it was true. Karen had tried to make life miserable at every turn. Karen shrieked. That's because rules matter. Without me, this neighborhood would fall apart. No, Linda said quietly, stepping closer, her eyes locking on Karen's. Without you, this neighborhood would finally breathe. Then the word struck harder than any shout. For the first time, Karen looked rattled. The sheriff nodded slowly. Here's what's going to happen. You boys, he gestured to the fake guards, you're going to leave now. Before, I decide to run you in for impersonating officers. And Karen. He paused, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. You're going to back off this family. You want to fight over property lines? Do it in court. But you show up like this again, and I will take action. The guards didn't waste a second. They muttered apologies and scurried back to their SUVs. Karen stood frozen, her lips pressed so tight they turned white. Finally, she hissed, This isn't over. I met her glare head on. You're right, I said, my voice steady. It's just beginning. Because I'm done letting you bully my family. The sheriff tipped his hat, his voice softer now. Folks, I'm sorry this ruined your celebration. I'll file a report and keep it on record. But for now, he smiled at Linda. Happy birthday, ma'am. Enjoy your lake. It's yours. Tears welled in Linda's eyes as she whispered, Thank you, Sheriff. The SUV drove off. The fake guards disappeared. Karen retreated in her own car, her tires spitting gravel as she sped away, and slowly, the air shifted. The children began laughing again. My son lit the candles on the cake. My daughter hugged Linda tight. The lake sparkled once more, as if it had been waiting for peace to return. But deep in my gut, I knew this wasn't the end. Karen wasn't the type to give up, and I wasn't the type to back down. That night, as the candles flickered and Linda made her wish, I looked around at my family, at the people I loved more than life itself, and I swore silently that no matter what storm Karen tried to bring next, it would be ready. The birthday ended with laughter, but the shadow of Karen's threat lingered. That night, after everyone left, Linda and I sat on the dock. You think she'll stop? I looked out at the lake, my jaw tightening. No, people like Karen don't stop. They just find another way. I was right. 2 weeks later, the first letter came. A thick envelope with the HOA's logo stamped across the top. I opened it at the kitchen table while Linda washed dishes. It wasn't just a fine. It was a notice of violation, claiming our dock, our boathouse. And even the swing set for the grandkids were unauthorized structures on HOA property. The letter demanded immediate removal, or a penalty of $500 per day. I slammed the paper down. She's lost her mind. Linda turned, drying her hands on a towel. Her face paled as she read over my shoulder. 500 a day? That's robbery. I nodded grimly. She's trying to break us. That evening, we gathered the kids and grandkids in the living room. The younger ones played with their toys while the adults sat in a circle. My son Daniel leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Dad, this is harassment. She knows the lake is an HOA property. She's just trying to drain you financially until you give up. My daughter Rachel's eyes flashed with anger. Then let's fight her. Take her to court. Expose her for what she is. Linda sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. I could see the worry etched into every line of her face. Court battles cost money. We've worked our whole lives to save for retirement. Do we really want to spend it fighting her? I reached for her hand. Honey, this isn't just about us. It's about our children. Our grandchildren. If Karen wins, if she sets this precedent, she'll walk all over everyone else too. We can't let her. Daniel nodded firmly. Then we fight. Karen wasn't content with just letters. She wanted a spectacle. One Saturday morning, as I mowed the lawn, a convoy of HOA board members showed up. Clipboard in hand, they strutted across my property line, snapping photos of the dock, the boathouse. Even the fire pit we'd built 20 years ago. I shut off the mower and walked up, fury boiling inside me. You're trespassing. One man cleared his throat nervously. We're conducting an inspection, per HOA authority. HOA has no authority here, I shot back. This land isn't part of your covenant, and you know it. From behind them, I heard the sharp click of heels. Karen, dressed in a bright red blazer, her lips painted the same shade. She smirked like she owned the world. Smile for the camera, she said sweetly. These photos will go nicely with the lawsuit we're filing. Stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. Karen, you're playing with fire. She leaned in, her perfume sharp, her words like venom. Good. I like the smell of smoke. That night, Linda broke down. I found her sitting in the bedroom, clutching an old photo album. Inside was a picture of us, young and full of dreams. Standing on this very dock the year we bought the place, her tears fell onto the page. This was supposed to be our sanctuary. Our safe place? I don't want to spend my golden years fighting. I pulled her into my arms. I know, sweetheart. But sometimes, standing still is the fight. We're not leaving. Not now. Not ever. She looked up at me, eyes red but resolute. Then promise me one thing. Anything. When this is over, we don't just win for us. We win for everyone she's ever hurt. I kissed her forehead. I promise. 2 weeks later, the official court summons arrived. The HOA, led by Karen, was suing us for illegal occupation and use of HOA property. Linda stared at the papers, her hands trembling. She actually did it. I nodded grimly. She's betting we'll cave. But she doesn't know us. We hired a lawyer, a seasoned man named Mr. Harris who had fought HOA cases before. He studied the documents and shook his head. This is one of the weakest cases I've ever seen. The deed is clear. The county maps are clear. The HOA has no jurisdiction over your land or lake. But, he paused. But what? I asked. She's counting on draining you with legal fees. That's her strategy. Make it so costly, you give in. I clenched my fists. Then we make it worth every penny. The day of the first hearing, the courtroom was packed. Neighbors came to watch, some out of curiosity, others out of quiet support. Karen sat at the plaintiff's table, dressed sharply, her chin held high. She looked more like a queen presiding over peasants than a neighbor seeking justice. When it was my turn to testify, I stood tall, holding the original deed in my hand. My voice didn't shake. This land and this lake were purchased by my wife and me in 1992. We have maintained it, cared for it, and lived here for decades before the HOA ever existed. The HOA has no legal claim. This isn't about rules. This is about control. The judge examined the deed, his brow furrowing. Mr. Miller, these documents appear very clear. The lake is indeed in your name. Karen jumped to her feet. But, Your Honor, the community depends on that lake. It's unfair for one family to claim ownership when everyone else enjoys it. The judge's gaze sharpened. Unfair does not mean unlawful, Mrs. Johnson. Rights are rights, whispers spread through the courtroom. Karen's face turned crimson, but she sat back down, glaring daggers at me, just when I thought we were gaining ground. Karen pulled a trick. The HOA produced a document, an amendment supposedly signed by previous owners decades ago. claiming the lake was intended for community use. My lawyer examined it and frowned. This could complicate things. My heart pounded. It's a forgery. I know it. Linda's hand found mine under the table. She whispered, "Then prove it." And in that moment, I knew this fight wasn't just about property. It was about truth. Because if Karen was willing to forge documents, what else was she hiding? The judge ordered the case to continue, pending verification of the document. Karen smirked as she walked out, her heels clicking like victory drums. But as I watched her leave, a strange calm settled over me, because sometimes the darkest lies lead you straight to the light, and I had a feeling Karen had just dug her own grave. The night after the court session, I couldn't sleep. The image of that forged amendment document haunted me. If the judge believed it, everything we had fought for could slip away. I sat at the dining table with the deed spread out in front of me. The paper was worn with age, edges curled, but still strong. Linda came down quietly, wrapping her robe around her shoulders. "You're still at it," she whispered. I rubbed my temples. "I know that paper's a fake. I just need proof." She set down a steaming cup of tea. Her hand rested on my shoulder. "Then we'll find it together." The next morning, Daniel called. "Dad, I've been digging through county records online. You're right, there's no amendment recorded anywhere. But guess what?" His voice carried excitement. "What?" I asked. "There is a record of the original surveyor who mapped the property back in the 90s. He's retired now, but he still lives nearby. If anyone can confirm the boundaries, it's him." Hope surged in my chest. "Son, you may have just saved us." That afternoon, we visited Mr. Grayson, the old surveyor. His office smelled of dust and ink, maps stacked high on every shelf. He adjusted his glasses as I handed him the supposed amendment, studied it for less than a minute before chuckling. "This is no surveyor's work. Look here, the seal is smudged. The signature doesn't match mine. And the measurements. Wrong by a good 30 feet. This is a forgery," Linda gasped. "Can you testify to that?" Mr. Grayson nodded firmly. "With pleasure. I don't take kindly to someone using my name for lies." The next hearing was tense. Karen strutted in like a peacock, convinced her amendment had us cornered. But when Mr. Grayson took the stand, her confidence began to crack. He held the document up, pointing with his pen. "This is a forgery. The seal isn't mine. The handwriting isn't mine. The math is sloppy. No professional surveyor would sign off on this." Gasps rippled through the room. Karen leaped to her feet. "He's lying. He has to be." The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. "Order." He turned to Mr. Grayson. "You're certain of this?" "Absolutely, Your Honor." The judge's eyes narrowed at Karen. "Mrs. Johnson, presenting false documents to this court is a serious offense. Do you know how this so-called amendment came into the HOA's possession?" Karen stammered, her face pale. I was told it was authentic." "By who?" The judge pressed. She hesitated, then muttered, "Former board member," but everyone in the room knew. She had orchestrated it. The judge wasted no time. "This court finds the deed in favor of Mr. Miller. The lake and surrounding property are his and his alone. The HOA has no jurisdiction." Furthermore, his gaze locked on Karen. "This board has acted in bad faith. If further evidence of forgery is discovered, criminal charges will follow." Karen's face crumpled. For the first time, she looked small, deflated. Her empire of intimidation cracked right there in that courtroom. Linda squeezed my hand, streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered. I nodded, my own eyes wet. "We did it." Word spread fast. Neighbors who once stayed silent began approaching us with their own stories fines for flower pots. Threats over paint colors. Harassment over tiny violations. Karen had ruled with fear. And now her reign was ending. Within months, a vote was held. Karen was removed from her position as HOA president. The day she moved out, we watched from our porch as her moving truck pulled away. Linda sighed, not with anger, but with something like relief. She wasted so much energy on hate, she murmured. I almost feel sorry for her. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. Almost. 1 year later, on Linda's next birthday, the lake was calm again. Our family gathered on the dock just as before. This time, no SUVs, no shouting, no fear, just laughter, music. Well, as the candles flickered on her cake, Linda looked at me with a soft smile. This is what I wished for last year. I kissed her cheek. Better late than never. Grandkids splashed in the water. The sun dipped low, and for the first time in a long time, peace truly returned. When the evening quieted and the stars came out, I sat alone on the dock. Reflecting, I thought about Karen, how her need for control had consumed her, how lies had destroyed her, how she had lost everything because she couldn't let others live in peace, and I thought about us, how close we came to losing what we loved, how standing firm, even when it hurt, preserved our home, our memories, our family. I realized then, peace is never free, but it's always worth fighting for. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever faced a bully, whether it's an HOA, a neighbor, or anyone who tries to take what's rightfully yours, remember this: truth has a way of shining through. And sometimes, the best gift you can give your family is the courage to stand your ground